When you think about it, as you drive to your job, every morning, or, you work your 9 to 5, you work your 40-hour work week, and you make your $50, $60, $100,000 a year, whatever you make, just remember that there's a college football coach out there that's going to get fired and make more money than you will ever make in your lifetime. Is there any better job out there than a fired college football coach? I mean, we've seen this over the last few years. We've seen it with, Jimbo Fisher getting fired by Texas A&M, getting bought out and getting $70-something million. We saw Ed Ogeron get bought out at LSU. Can't remember the exact dollar figure, but it was a pile of money. Trust me. And now there's a lot of rumors, and I know y'all may have seen them this week so far, that Bill Belichick, which the North Carolina experiment with Coach Belichick has been an absolute dumpster fire from day one. And now, it's like in college football, there's a dynamic surrounding a football team where when everything's going good, the Wolves aren't at the gate. When everything starts to go bad and you start to lose and you start to get your teeth kicked in by every single team with a pulse, the Wolves are at the gate, man. And the Wolves are at the gate for Bill Belichick. They're calling for that man's head. But let's talk about the fact that Bill Belichick scammed the University of North Carolina out of millions of dollars. And I don't know if I said it on record on the podcast or not before the season started. Something didn't smell right about the Bill Belichick thing in North Carolina. Something didn't quite vibe. Something didn't quite jive with it, with his girlfriend, being so involved with the program and being around, and just the way that, he gets interviewed and she's over sitting in the corner like, we're not going to answer that. Run, Bill, if you listen to this. I doubt Bill Belichick's listening, but dude, just run, man. Get away from that. Like, that's just a lot of toxic energy on the part there when she's sitting over in the corner, basically being his PR person or something. I don't know. But anyway, back on off the soapbox and on to Bill Belichick. The whole thing has been a disaster. And I remember before the season started, there was a lot of people that were hyping this thing up. Like, man, this could really work. Bill Belichick, is one of the greatest NFL coaches of all time, arguably the greatest NFL coach of all time. And, we thought with the new age of NIL, the new age of, the transfer portal and everything, that Bill Belichick was going to be able to build a competent football team in North Carolina. They don't lack funding. So there's check number one. If you're checking boxes, there's box number one. They don't lack money. Two, with the transfer portal, very similar to free agency in the NFL. Bill Belichick, probably one of the best people in that arena, so to speak, of evaluating talent. So when you look at that, think, hey, checks box number two maybe. Well, then you look into the fact of that, can he coach? Yes, absolutely. We thought, and a lot of people were fooled by the fact that they thought that he checked off a lot of boxes. So likewise, everybody felt it was a good hire. North Carolina sure did, paid him a lot of money. And, it's not working out so well. Now North Carolina's losing to literally everybody pretty much that they've played so far. I think they've won 2 games, but now the Wolves are at the gate. And there's a lot of rumors coming out. A lot of players, a lot of parents of players, a lot of powerful alumni, a lot of people that are very, very closely intertwined with the football program there at UNC are coming out with these stories about Bill Belichick and how he treats his players and how he's a terrible person and this and that. And needless to say, I don't think that he makes it to the end of the season. And I'm calling that right now. I don't think that's necessarily a hot take because I feel like a lot of people would agree with that. But I don't think that he makes it to the end of the season. It's looking very gloomy there in Chapel Hill for Bill Belichick, or Chapel Bill as they were touting. We saw the newspaper clippings and the articles on ESPN, Chapel Bill, it's not working out so well. Chapel Bill is going to be Chapel Bye, I feel, before much longer. So, but to get off of that, I just wanted to jump in and say that just because I know that that's been a little bit of a hot topic over the last couple days since I last spoke with y'all. and wanted to kind of shed a little light on it if you're not too familiar with the situation, or if you wanted a little bit more information. You can do your own research, look it up. It's all over social media. It's all over Twitter. It's everywhere. Just type Bill Belichick UNC buyout, and you'll get all the information you want. You can read all the message boards, all the rumors, everything else. Get you some of that hot gossip here in the middle of the week. Jumping into the predictions. This is the Thursday prediction show. I have not introduced myself. If you're listening to me for the first time, I'm Colby Allen. This is my show After the Whistle. Appreciate you tuning in. If you're one of the day one people, appreciate you. And I'm trying to think of a name for my listeners. I haven't come up with a clever one yet. I don't know. We'll work on that. I'll get back to you on that. So jumping right in, I've divided some games, and I've got 8 games here, and I've divided games into 2 categories essentially. I've got the marquee matchups, which, by the way, heck of a slate we got this weekend. A great lineup of football games, and I've also got some under the radar games, some games you might want to tune into. Check out. It might be, it's probably going to be a little bit more of an intriguing matchup than you think. So jumping right in first, we're going to go into the under the radar games first, because I know, I love to keep y'all hanging here for a little while. If you're here just to listen to the marquee matchups, we'll leave you on here for a little bit longer so you listen to my takes on the under the radar games. And I've got 2 right here, and potentially 3. I feel like there's one game that I've got in the marquee matchup category that I feel like we could slide it to the under the radar, just because it's a contest between 2 ranked opponents, but I don't think it's going to be a good football game. We'll get to that in just a few minutes. First, we're going to start, and we're going to start with Florida and Texas A&M. Intriguing matchup, very under the radar, because of the fact that, I've gotten some people that have given me some, not feedback, but have kind of, not bit back, but pushed back on the idea, I guess is the best word, that Florida's got a capable football team of spoiling some seasons this year. And they really do. And it doesn't take knowing football. It doesn't take anything to understand that Florida has the capability. I know I said leading up to the Texas game last week, Florida has a scary team in the sense that I don't think they can show up consistently week in and week out and put together these A-plus performances. But I think that they're capable of a few weekends, a few Saturdays out of the season. I think they're capable of putting some things together. And I think that we saw that last weekend with the game against Texas in the Swamp. We saw them put it together. We saw Jaden Baugh have over 100 rushing yards. Florida, really got to what I think is going to make them dangerous for some teams moving forward. And that is the fact that Florida got the run game going. And you can go back and watch, and I've watched many clips of the Florida-Texas game. I watched the whole game, and then I've also been watching a little bit of film on it and watching some stuff. And Florida was getting a very good push up front on Texas A&M's front. They were able to run the football north and south, not so much east and west. They were able to run east and west, but the north and south running was very impressive to me from the Florida Gators against Texas. Jaden Baugh, straight downhill, over 100 yards, touched the ball, I think, 27 times. And what you saw was the opening up of the run game took a lot of the pressure off of DJ Lagway. And you saw DJ Lagway play a much better football game. I think he had the 1 interception, and it was a bad throw, but it was not a horrible throw like we've seen him make this year. He's made some this year where we're like, oh gosh, why did you turn loose of that? But the one he threw wasn't really egregious. But it definitely showed me that if Florida can run the football and take the pressure off of Lagway having to basically do everything, they can spoil some seasons. And so they're going to Kyle Field, going to play Texas A&M. They're going on the road. They're outside of the friendly confines of the Swamp. So now they get to go on a road in a big-time environment at Kyle Field, one of the loudest environments in college football. Whether or not you're like me and you think that Texas A&M fans are a cult, or whatever way you think, they're crazy. They make a lot of noise. They got all these crazy things that they do where they sway back and forth and saw the horns off and all that stuff. So whatever. But either way, crazy environment. They go on the road. The question here is going to be, when we look at A&M, we look at Florida. Is Florida going to enjoy the same success running the football that they enjoyed against Texas? Texas A&M, obviously, Vegas is respecting Florida a pretty good bit in this spot. Texas A&M favored by 7.5 points. So, they're touchdown-ish favorite, which I feel, I feel pretty, I feel like that's a pretty good number. That's pretty solid. FPI, if you care about that type of thing, 73.9% chance to win for Texas A&M. I really don't go by FPI. It's been wrong so many times. So I don't know what they use to calculate it, what metric or analytics or whatever they use to calculate it, but it's wrong a lot. But we'll just go into the fact that, to me, when you look at this Texas A&M team across the board, when we look at the playmakers, here's the game plan to me for Florida. Florida, you got to run the football. You got to run the football effectively like you did last week. Because this high-flying Texas A&M offense, with Marcel Reed, you got Le'Veon Moss, Ruben Owens, Casey Concepcion, Mario Craver, just playmakers everywhere. This is the type of offense they want to take the lid off of your defense. Florida's got a couple keys here. Run the football effectively, control the time of possession. This game needs to finish somewhere in the neighborhood of 35, 36 minutes Florida's way. Really and truly. They need to get as close to 40 as they possibly can. And likewise, they also need to play good coverage on the back end, because the issue that we've seen with a lot of teams playing Texas A&M this year, they get kind of lulled to sleep from the run game. And, we see this dynamic, we see these dynamic running backs for Texas A&M and, Le'Veon Moss, Ruben Owens for Texas A&M. We see them just really just gash teams. And it's very easy to get sucked in to that dynamic. And then all of a sudden, boom, Marcel Reed over the top to Casey Concepcion, Mario Craver. They're big play receivers. They're looking to catch the ball 15, 20 yards down the field. And that's about, on average, with their passing offense, that's about what they're averaging per throw, per completion. It's nuts. And that's just because of a good run game. Texas A&M in this spot, being at home, I will say this, and my take on this is, I think Florida keeps this game really close into the fourth quarter. I think Florida keeps it close. I think Florida's defense can keep them in a lot of football games that they likewise shouldn't be in. I think this game is tight as we make our way into the fourth quarter. And then I think A&M scores a touchdown, late to go up, and I think A&M barely covers. Let's say barely covers on this one. I'm going to go Texas A&M 33, Florida 24. I feel like I feel like that offense is going to start to click a little bit. I feel like they're going to be able to run the football somewhat effectively, even though A&M's defense is pretty nasty up front. I feel like Florida's going to be able to move them around, because from what I saw last week, there's no reason for me to believe that they won't, seeing how they handled Texas's front seven. And that's not me saying Texas's front seven is better than A&M's. I'm just saying they're pretty, it's a pretty good barometer to use to look at how Florida's O-line pushed around Texas, to say that they could potentially do the same thing with A&M. So therefore, I think this game could be, it could be in the neighborhood of 24-24, late, and then maybe into the fourth quarter, and then, I think A&M pulls away a little bit there towards the end. So I've got 33-24 on that one. Moving on to the other under-the-radar game, and this is a game that is kind of been lost on this weekend because of the fact that we do have some matchups that, we've got the Indiana and Oregon, we got the Alabama, Missouri, we got the Georgia, Auburn, Red River rivalry. We've got the Michigan USC game. We've just got a lot of contests that kind of overshadow a game like South Carolina and LSU. This is to me, a get-right spot for South Carolina, and this is also a prove-it spot for LSU in a way, and let me explain what I mean by that. South Carolina comes into this game with a whole different, air surrounding them. I feel like in a sense South Carolina's playing with house money, but at the same time, I also feel like their back's against the wall. We get to find out how dangerous this South Carolina team is when their back's against the wall. They already have 2 losses. Another loss essentially eliminates you from playoff contention. Not that I'm saying that South Carolina's a playoff contender. When you look at the schedule that they have remaining, they've got a tough one. So I'm not saying that South Carolina is a playoff contender. I'm saying a loss here eliminates any hope whatsoever. Even if you win out, it eliminates all hope. After, if you lose to LSU and you win out, I still think you're not there. But coming into this football game, LSU also has something to prove as well. LSU has been one of those teams this year that everybody was picking to, go to the playoff and, be a national championship contender, and they just have not looked the part. Now, the defense has looked great. The offense and the offense they were supposed to be has not shown up yet. With Garrett Nussmeier, there's rumors floating around that Garrett Nussmeier's hurt, playing through an injury. I don't know if I believe that. It's coming from sources that are kind of shady that you can't really trust. So I don't know how I feel about that as far as, I feel like if he was in fact hurt to the point where it was affecting his play on the field, that he would not be in the game, So don't know how much I really am buying into that, of the Nussmeier being hurt rumors that are floating around. But with this team, with Aaron Anderson and with these playmakers that they have, we were expecting LSU to be one of those teams scoring, easily 30+ a game, almost. And they just haven't shown that. Offense has been very sluggish. They get out of the gate really slow, and they just kind of just methodically it's almost like a pro offense, in a way. It's just like, oh man, like they can barely get to 24 points, and it's puzzling to me with the amount of talent that they have on this roster. It baffles me that they're not able to generate more points than they have so far this season in their contests against, Ole Miss. When you look at the games that they've put up the most points, Southeast Louisiana, they put up 56. That's great. Other than that, they've put up 17, 23, 20, and 19. So not a very high-powered offense like we were expecting from LSU. South Carolina comes into this game with a lot to prove. LSU comes in this game with a lot to lose. 2 losses already at this point in the season. LSU's looking at Vanderbilt after South Carolina, then they got A&M, Alabama, and then they have Oklahoma to finish the year. So they don't exactly have room to lose another one right now anyway. So both of these teams, I think South Carolina more than LSU in desperation mode if they want to salvage any hope or cling to any hope of getting into the playoff. They've got to win here. Lenora Sellers, in my opinion, he's by far got the most upside of any quarterback in the SEC. Very talented, but hasn't quite, he's shown the flashes, and we've seen the flashes this year, just like we saw last year. We've seen the flashes of Lenora Sellers, and we're like, man, this guy is amazing. We're talking about first-round pick, maybe number 1 overall pick in the draft. Just tremendous upside, a tremendous ceiling, and a very high floor for Lenora Sellers. But we've only seen bits and pieces. It's come in spurts. And this is a game where he really has to step up. You're going into a hostile environment. You're playing in Death Valley at night, mind you, which is just an absolutely electric, crazy atmosphere. Those of you that have been in that stadium before can 100% speak to that. Those LSU fans are nuts regardless. At night, completely different animal in Baton Rouge. Completely different animal. I'd tell you, if you're a college football fan in general, you ever get the opportunity to go to an LSU game at night in Death Valley, go. Cross that one, check that one off the bucket list. An insane environment. The stadium will literally be shaking under your feet. It's unreal. Because of that, I feel like this game is very low scoring. I feel like that this game is going to be a somewhat of a slugfest, just because of the fact that, one, LSU has not been able to score a lot of points this year. Neither has really South Carolina. South Carolina is also one of those teams that has shown some spurts as far as scoring points. But, we haven't seen anything that's really proven that. So I think both of these teams, I think the first team to score 24 points in this football game is going to win. And the unfortunate part of that for South Carolina is I don't think it's going to be them. I think this game ends up being 20-24. I think LSU wins this football game. I do not have LSU covering though. This is a very big spread. I think this is like not a fool's gold, spread, but it's a do not touch spread unless you're if you want to bet this game, bet the money line South Carolina, but LSU favored by 9.5 points. Like I'm not really touching that. I don't think, from what I've seen so far of LSU, and they may prove me wrong Saturday night, I haven't seen an LSU offense that's capable of beating anybody by 10 points. I really haven't. They just seem to get to a point in the end of the game where you feel like they're going to pull away. You feel like they're going to, separate, and they just don't. They find ways to fumble the football, throw an interception, whatever. They will find ways to let other teams and inferior competition hang around, and for that very reason, I don't have them covering. I have them winning 24-20 there on Saturday night in Baton Rouge. So the marquee matchups, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over one first, because this is a game to me that I feel like it could be, it could be a marquee matchup. It's two ranked teams. I just don't think that one team has anything for the other team based on what I've seen so far this season, and it's Ohio State going to Illinois. Illinois, we've seen this year, we've seen flashes of, somewhat brilliance from Brett Bielema's team, but also we've seen, it's kind of like the good, the bad, and the ugly. We've seen the good, we've seen some bad, but then we've seen some ugly, and we've seen ugly in the by way of them getting their doors blown off 63-10 by Indiana. Ohio State favored in this football game by 14.5 points. And from what we've seen from Ohio State, I somewhat, tend to like that line. I tend to agree with that. I think that Ohio State has kind of been not in neutral, but they've been in like first gear. Maybe they've shifted up to second at times, this season. I really want to see this Ohio State team put it in high gear. I really do. I think they've been holding back a lot, especially after the Texas game. Haven't really had a whole lot of quality opponents after Texas. I mean, you had Grambling, Ohio, Washington, Minnesota. So they've kind of just coasted to this point. I would love to see Illinois challenge Ohio State to a point where Ohio State has to kick it up a notch on offense, because we know that defense. That defense is solid. We've seen the defense. But I would love to see Ohio State kick this thing into overdrive, because I don't think we've seen what Ohio State's fully capable of on offense yet this season. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think they've been holding a lot back. First game of the season against Texas, Julian Sand was kind of, you could tell that he didn't have the keys to the offense. You could tell that they were holding a lot back, and you could tell that they were like, they didn't want to push him off the diving board into the deep end, so to speak. It's like, kid couldn't swim yet, and you're just kicking him off the end of the diving board. It's not good for business. So to me, the training wheels have slowly just kind of come off for Julian Sand. He's looked better and better with every week. I mean, heck, against Minnesota, he looked really, really good. I mean, really good. He had 326 passing yards, 23 of 27, 3 touchdowns. I mean, the kid had one more incompletion than he had touchdowns. Just a phenomenal football game. Carnell Tate, I mean, Jeremiah Smith definitely gets all the attention of that football team when it comes to, when it comes to the receivers. Everybody, Jeremiah Smith, generational talent. Not going to argue that point at all. But Carnell Tate, hey, number 17 for Ohio State, to me, he's just as good. He really is. Just as good. I mean, you're talking, I feel like first-round talent there at the wide receiver position for Ohio State. Keep an eye on Carnell Tate. I feel like he is, and maybe he does benefit a little bit by the extra attention that Jeremiah Smith gets, but still, great football player, great receiver. And Illinois here, with you got Luke Altmaier versus Julian Sand. Quarterback advantage to me, looking at this matchup for matchup, you would want to say Altmaier based on the experience, based on the fact that he's got like 1,600 yards this year, based on the fact that he has yet to throw an interception, makes good decisions, doesn't take too many risks though. I will say that. He's not the quarterback that's going to try to thread the needle. But to me, I'd still give the edge to Sam, just because of the fact that I feel like he's more talented and I feel like he's got better weapons to work with. To me, you got Hank Beatty at Illinois. To me, is nowhere near the caliber receiver that a Jeremiah Smith or a Carnell Tate is. Of course, yeah, he's got almost 600 yards receiving this season, but to me, you got a dynamic duo on the other side of the football. The issue, or not the issue, but more or less the key here to Illinois is, and you're going to hear me say it a lot, but it's got to be run the football. Got to run the football and keep that offense on. If you want any chance to win, keep that offense off the field, control the clock, run the football, and maybe you can turn this into a 4-quarter game and you can get to the fourth quarter within a score, and maybe you can bank on the fact that Ohio State might make a mistake at a critical moment and you might be able to capitalize on it. Other than that, I think if you try to line up strength for strength and you try to beat Ohio State at their own game or something like that, I think this game gets ugly fast. That's what I'm going with. Big noon kickoff Saturday, Ohio State traveling to Illinois. I've got Ohio State winning this one, and I've got Ohio State covering in this one as well. Something along the lines of, let's just say 30-13. I do not see that Ohio State defense is for real. And I just think that Ohio State kicks it up a notch against Illinois. And so I've got Ohio State winning this one 13-13, or 30-13, like I said, covering that 14.5 point spread. Moving on to another game that, I feel like, man, there's so many good games this weekend. It's going to be, it's going to be hard. I'm going to have to do the quad box on my computer. I'm going to have to do the quad box on a monitor. I'm going to have to do a quad box on my TV. I'm going to have to turn on a bunch of different games at the same time to try to watch all of these, because let's jump into Red River. And a lot of drama around this football game so far, because we've seen Brent Venables. He's been interviewed this week talking about the football game. And the big question surrounding this game, is John Mateer going to play? And I think it's very detrimental to Oklahoma if he does. I mean, you got Michael Hawkins Jr., who's familiar with the rivalry, played in it last year, also a good quarterback, but not to the level of a Mateer. Oklahoma's a completely different football team, top to bottom, with Mateer on the field. That isn't me saying Texas is going to win this football game. I'm just saying that it adds a different dynamic. But Brent Venables has been he's saying he is assuming that Mateer's not going to play. There's some rumors floating around on message boards, take that whatever way you want, that Mateer's going to play or could potentially play. There's some guy I saw on one of the Oklahoma Sooners message boards said he spoke to somebody who spoke to somebody who spoke to somebody's cousin or whatever, that he was given an 80 to 90% chance, and said he was probable. So, like I said, take that whatever way you want. Last thing if there's one thing that I've learned when you scour over message boards and you're looking over, don't take a lot of these fans at their word, because a lot of them are just looking to just get some attention. They'll say, I know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody on the training staff, and they told me that he's going to play. I wouldn't pay that much attention to it. I wouldn't read into it that much. But to me, it kind of changes things if he does play and if he doesn't play. If he does play, Oklahoma's clearly the better football team, to me, top to bottom. Now, talent-wise, you have an argument to say that Texas has the talent somewhat to match Oklahoma. To me, to this point in the football season, Oklahoma looks the part of the better football team, especially on the defensive side of the football. I mean, you're talking one of the top units in the country against the pass, against the run. There are a lot of different metrics. They're top 5 in tackles for loss, sacks, I mean, they broke their own sack record with 10 sacks against Auburn just a few weeks ago. Just a ferocious, ferocious defense, front seven. And when we look at the way Arch Manning's been playing, and we contrast that with how Oklahoma's defense has looked. We look at the havoc that they caused Jackson Arnold, and we look at the distress and the havoc they've caused every other quarterback they've faced this year so far. And you look at the way Arch Manning's playing. It's very hard for me to believe and make the argument that I feel like Texas has a chance. Stay with me. I think Texas has a chance if Mateer doesn't play, which it's looking like he's not. But like I said, it's kind of right now, it's something that remains to be seen. Who knows? Crazy Boomer Sooner 19, whatever his username was on the message board. He may be right. He may have his connection. Who knows? But if Mateer doesn't play, Texas has an opportunity here to reinsert themselves into the conversation. Because after the loss to Florida, Texas is very much still in control of their own destiny, so to speak. The only problem is they just have to win out. They have to win out. They have to go, they have to go 10-2. And this is a must win for Texas. The desperation is here. I mean, you've got this football game, and then you've got Kentucky at Kentucky, you got Mississippi State at Mississippi State, then you got Vanderbilt coming to your place. Then you go to Athens. Then you have Texas coming, and then you got A&M at the end of the season. So they're going to play potentially 2 top 10 teams out of the last 3 football games. So you don't need to drop this one. And that's, to me, what kind of Texas do we see? Because so far we've seen a very methodical Texas. We've seen a Texas that doesn't really want to go for the kill shot, doesn't want to go for the throw or go for the throat. We've also seen a quarterback that doesn't make the right reads, that clearly, there'll be wide open receivers. He doesn't see them. I think he's gotten very skittish in the pocket, happy feet, tries to throw sidearm when it's not necessary. Mechanically, and I know this is kind of funny because people are going to say, well, you never played quarterback, so why are you judging a quarterback's mechanics? Because I'm basing this off of people that I watch and listen to that have evaluated quarterbacks for decades. I listen to quarterback coaches on podcasts that say something's off with Arch Manning's mechanics and needs to fix it. That's what I'm basing it off of. It's not me critiquing him by myself. It is tons of people that I listen to that are critiquing the same things with Arch Manning that I've been critiquing the whole year so far. And to me, it's like, this is the way I look at this game. And this is the way I'm going to pick it. So, Oklahoma, to me, that defense travels. Defense shows up when the offense is lacking. So in my way of thinking, Texas's defense has not looked up to the standard that we were expecting them to play at this year. They've looked great. They've looked good at times, but they haven't been that elite unit with Anthony Hill over there, and they haven't been that elite unit that we were expecting out of them this year. Oklahoma's unit, the front seven, the secondary, they will hit you in the mouth. And if you don't think that they are going to get after Arch early and make him feel them, they're going to hit him right after he throws the football. Boom. They're going to come downhill and hit him. They're going to sack him. They're going to put pressure on him. It's not just a sack thing. Like, people want to say, oh, we're not sacking the quarterback as much as we should. It's not. Are you affecting the quarterback? It's not so much a sack. Can you affect him? Can you get him out of the pocket? Can you hit him? Can you make him think about you? That's where I think Oklahoma's going to come in. And that's why I think this game's low scoring, because I don't think Mateer's going to play. And I'm sure it'll come out, later, but if he is or not. But I think he's not going to play. And so I'm going to go Oklahoma in this one. Oklahoma, and what's weird about it, Texas favored by 2.5 in this one. Give me Oklahoma. Actually, the line switched. My bad. The line was 2.5 Texas way. Now it's Oklahoma 1.5. Give me Oklahoma covering And I'm going to say I think this is going to be a Red River game for the ages. I'm going to go Oklahoma 19, Texas 16. I think both of these defenses show up. I think one team's going to make more plays than the other, and I think it's going to come down to a very low-scoring affair. This has been a high-scoring affair in the past. I think with Mateer sidelined, I think with the offensive woes for Texas, I don't think they break through against this defense. So I think Oklahoma wins this one somewhere along the lines of 19-16. Oklahoma wins and covers. Moving on, Deep South's oldest rivalry. The Georgia Bulldogs go into the Plains to face the Auburn Tigers. Jordan Hare, and I'm going to say Jordan Hare, because I know it aggravates you Auburn fans when I say it like that, right? Jordan Hare at night. So the thing here, we've seen, as Georgia fans, we have seen some crazy things happen in that stadium over the years at night. We've seen the kick six. We've seen the prayer at Jordan Hare. We've seen that. We've seen some crazy things happen, and it's just like Kirby Smart said at SEC Media Days, the place is cursed. Like he said, it was going to be one of Georgia's toughest tests this football season was going on the road there and playing, because he said the place is cursed. Nick Saban even echoed that fact in an interview, or talking about how the place is cursed. Crazy things happen. When we look at this game with Auburn, and I'm going to analyze Auburn first, and I will say this. Auburn, to me, is a team that very well could have beaten Oklahoma. When you look at the schedule that they've played so far, there are some I guess you could say, some things that stick out to me. When you look at 16-10, Texas A&M, tight football game, Auburn had some chances, in that one. 24-17 against Oklahoma. They had their chances in that one as well, but they couldn't capitalize. Auburn's one of those teams I kind of say it's almost kind of like Florida, like I said before last week when Florida played Texas. Auburn's one of those teams that I feel like they're more than capable of putting it all together one week. The question is this going to be the week at home? Because the one key thing that those two losses have in common is they were away from their house, so to speak. They went on the road, played Oklahoma and Norman. They went on the road and played A&M in College Station at Kyle Field. This one is in the friendly confines of their stadium. Is this the night, or is this the day where they put it all together? And after what we saw with Georgia last week against Kentucky, with the way Georgia's been able to run the football, we've seen this Auburn defense where, and it's, I wouldn't say leaky against the rush, but A&M rushed for over 200, against Auburn. We saw that A&M team rush for over 200. Oklahoma, kind of somewhat of a different story. Oklahoma runs for 32 yards, on 26 carries. So very much a run-stopping type defense, that the way it's built there in Auburn. So Georgia wanting to establish that run, Chauncey Bowens with Nate Frazier, Dwight Phillips Jr., Josh McCray, just have a stable full of backs. Georgia wants to come in. They want to control the line of scrimmage. They want to run the football. They want to rotate fresh legs in as often as they can. And they just want to lean on you. I know it's no secret what Kirby Smart's game plan is when he goes into every single game like this. He wants to lean on you, and eventually break you in the second half. They want to lean on you and break you in the second half. And Auburn's been very Jekyll Hyde as far as their run defense goes. I mean, we've seen them, shut Oklahoma down for the most part. And then we've seen Texas A&M just kind of run roughshod on them. So the question is, which Auburn run defense shows up? I think that's the big question around this football game. If Auburn comes in, shuts the run game down early for Georgia, they force Georgia into obvious passing situations, get Georgia playing behind the sticks, I think Auburn has a chance to win this football game if they do that. The question for me on the Georgia side is, one, you got to establish the run. Two, you got to limit the big plays because everybody knows, what Auburn's got on the outside with Cam Coleman, who hasn't been talked about that much this year in that national spotlight, whatever. Hasn't been talked about. Eric Singleton as well. Georgia fans like myself remember that name very well from the Georgia Tech game last year. Very dynamic athlete, and also you got, like I said, you got Cam Coleman. You got a very good running back in Jeremiah Cobb as well. Jackson Arnold, at times he's looked good, at times he hasn't, and he's very much Jekyll and Hyde. The offense kind of goes where Jackson Arnold goes. If Jackson Arnold's having a good game, they're going to play well, I feel like. And I feel like that's true for a lot of quarterbacks. But you've seen some quarterbacks in the SEC that don't have their best game, but, their run game can kind of bail them out at times. So to me, it all rides on Arnold. Georgia's ability, to me, to line up and stop the run is going to be very key in this matchup because you've got a quarterback that's a very dynamic athlete that can that can pull that football and run and gash you. Georgia's got to be able to stop that, and they also have to they got to be careful they don't get lulled to sleep by play action, by option plays, things of that sort, and don't get beat over the top by Cam Coleman, by Eric Singleton. You've got to watch those guys. You got to keep those guys in front of you. You got to stay in phase with those guys. We've seen at times a Georgia secondary this year that has been very susceptible to that deep ball, to that deep pass. They play a lot of man. Some of the technique is not what it needs to be. You see corners that will, backpedal, open their hips up, take bad angles, get, outside leverage, receiver beats them inside leverage, receiver beats them outside. They just can't get those hips around fast enough, get in phase with the receiver. I've seen some technique problems. That's a big, to me, that's a big question mark with this Georgia secondary. Can they limit the big play? I think coming into this game, and here's where I sit on it, and everybody knows, where my loyalty lies as far as a fan. I think Georgia gets this done. I think this game, though, I've seen some score predictions online of people saying Georgia's going to win this game 45-17. I don't see that happening. I see this game being tight. I see this game being a dogfight well into the second half with Georgia pulling away late is what I'm seeing. I think Auburn maybe comes in the fourth quarter, maybe makes a key mistake. Georgia pulls away late, and I think Georgia wins this football game 31-23 over Auburn, covering the number, which is 7.5, my bad, 3.5 in Georgia's favor. I'm looking at the wrong thing. I've got my notes here. I'm looking at another game. So 31-23 Dogs, I'm going to call the final in that one. Moving on to Alabama and Missouri. Alabama, Missouri, a game to me, there's a lot of upset talk, and I'm going to officially put Bama on upset alert in Columbia, Missouri. And I'm going to say my teams, if I go a scale of 1 to 10, upset alert, Bama, I'm going to put y'all at like a 7. I'm going to put y'all to 7, 7.5, maybe even an 8. Like this is a tough spot. And the reason I say that, one big key reason, Missouri, Ahmad Hardy, best running back in the SEC, number 1 rush offense. What does Bama's defense do horribly this year? Defend the run. We have seen this Bama defense that is not – Bama historically has not been a bad, defense when it comes to the run. This year, they've looked terrible against it. Georgia gashed them. We saw Florida State gash them. And that is Missouri's strength, is running the football. I mean, they're going to run Ahmad Hardy downhill. They run a lot of 12 personnel with 2 tight ends on the field. So they're lining up and basically daring you to stop it. Georgia was running a lot. Georgia was getting some really good runs between the tackles against Bama without 2 tight ends on the field, with just 1 tight end on the field. It's more concerning to me for Bama that Missouri's bringing in an extra body. Missouri's bringing in extra body, 12 personnel, to block against a Bama defense that has been very, very susceptible to the run this year so far from the teams that they've played, that are, good at running football, Florida State and Georgia. That's what has Bama to me on upset alert. Upset watch, whatever you want to call it. Upset watch, upset alert, whatever. That's what has Bama on upset alert to me, is when I look at this Bama defense, and they do not look characteristic of an Alabama defense at all. Alabama defense historically is known for, playing the run well, making an offense one-dimensional. And we haven't really seen that. Missouri with Ahmad Hardy, with Coleman at the wide receiver position, great athlete there, Bo Prabula, transfer from Penn State, who's played very well, who also can use his legs. And we saw what kind of problems that Castellanos gave Alabama. Bo Prabula, I'm not saying that he's the athlete that Castellanos for Florida State is, but he's also a very good athlete in his own right. The key to Bama is going to be you've got to stop the run. I hope that has been drilled into their skulls all week at practice by Kalen DeBoer and this staff, is we've got to stop the run. Because here's the thing. If you allow Missouri to run the football and shorten the game, I like Missouri's chances in this football game if they're not having to play from behind. If Missouri gets the ball first, runs the football down the field, say 12-play drive, 75 yards, and takes 6 or 7 minutes off the clock, scores a touchdown, they've got Alabama right where they want them. If Missouri gets the football first, Alabama forces a 3-and-out, stuffs 2 runs, and, not able to complete a pass on third down for Missouri. They're able to get off the field. Bama's got Missouri right where they want them, because if Bama takes a lead, I don't like Missouri. I don't like this Missouri team playing from behind. They're a very much play from out in front football team. It's almost like when you watch these old school teams that run the wing tee or the flex bone offense, whatever. It's like that, where you don't want those teams getting like 2 touchdowns behind. It's bad. It's bad for business. They want to play with a lead, and that's what Missouri needs to do. That's the key. Jump on Bama early, play with a lead. Do not fall behind. Do not allow Bama to go up 14-0, because if they do, this Missouri offense was not built to play from behind and play catch up. That's key for Missouri. Alabama got to stop the run. And Missouri, too, got to keep Ty Simpson off the field, because, man, the dude's been spinning it. Like, that's, to me, best quarterback in the SEC right now, Ty Simpson, potentially the best quarterback in the country. Got to keep him off the field. How do you do that? Ahmad Hardy, run the football down Alabama's throat. I don't see any reason why, and I haven't seen any reason why Alabama is going to stop the run for Missouri, because I feel Missouri's run on some decent defenses this year. The question with it is, they ran on South Carolina, but 29-20 game against South Carolina. And, I think Hardy had 140 yards, somewhere in that neighborhood in that football game. So the question with that, I think they had total as a team, they had 300 or something. But what Missouri does well is they run the football well, but they also defend the run well. Mentioning that South Carolina game from a few weeks ago, they held South Carolina now to -9 rushing yards. That is not a typo. You can look it up. If you want to try to correct me, don't, because you can look it up on cfbstats.com. -9 rush yards in that contest Missouri's defense held South Carolina to. Just a master class in filling your gaps, keeping it inside, not letting running backs get outside, keeping Lenore Sellers contained. That, to me, is the defense that we need to see for Missouri Saturday if they want to upset Alabama. They've got to do that. And then, like I said, play with a lead, run the football, stop the run. Can't let Jam Miller run the football, because if Jam Miller starts to run the football a little bit on you, Ty Simpson's bag of tricks just opens up even more and more. The more that you allow Jam Miller to run the football, the more that Ty Simpson can play action to Jeremy Bernard, play action to Ryan Williams. Then the game can get ugly really fast. If you're Missouri and you allow Ty Simpson to get in a rhythm, this game they could jump out on you, and the next thing you know, you're two scores down. You don't have an offense that's built to catch up. You don't have an offense that's built to play from behind. Now you're in trouble. I like this game, and weird pick. I've been struggling with this one because I go back and I watch Missouri. I watch some of their contests, and I'm like, man, Alabama, that line's 3.5. Like, Vegas is definitely hammering Missouri on this one. The line's moved a little bit. When I look at just the way Alabama is, the swagger that Alabama's got around them right now after the win against Georgia, it's hard for me. It's hard for me to pick against them. And for me, I'm not going to pick against Alabama. I'm going to say Alabama goes into Como, gets it done. However, I feel like this is a game where it's tight. I feel like Missouri earns a lot of people's respect, even in a loss to Alabama. But I feel like Alabama avoids the upset spot for Missouri at night in Como. And I think Alabama wins this game 30-26. I think it's there. It's within striking distance for Missouri, but I've got Alabama win that one 30-26. I think Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard have a really good football game between the two of them. I think Ty Simpson lights it up, continues on his hot streak, and Bama rolls in Como. Michigan USC, a lot of drama surrounding this one so far. When we go out there, Michigan traveling all the way across the country, playing in Los Angeles. Sharon Moore made a comment about, the stands it's going to be a sellout because Michigan's playing. Lincoln Riley, they interviewed him about it. He doesn't care what Sharon Moore says, essentially, is what Lincoln Riley gets at. So a little bit of drama, a little bit of locker room material there prior to the game for Lincoln Riley and his team. A prove-it spot for Southern Cal. If you want to prove that you've kind of made a little bit of a leap, this is the game to prove it in. Because we know what we're getting with Michigan. I'm not really going to get too much into Michigan because we know what we're getting with them. You're getting a physical football team. Justice Haynes going to run the football downhill. You got Bryce Underwood, a young quarterback. Hasn't quite been given the keys to the Cadillac yet, so to speak. And so this, to me, is a classic moment for USC to jump on Michigan. Because if you don't do it now, when are you going to do it? You got to break through at some point. Lincoln Riley, to me, it's like as good of a coach as we hear how good Lincoln Riley is, hasn't shown us anything. He doesn't have anything to show for it. No playoff berth. They, were ranked last year up until a point and then choked it all away and just completely fell apart and were in shambles. This is the prove-it spot. Like I said, we see a USC team that, Lincoln Riley's been working on. They spent a lot of money. They've spent a lot of money on their players. You got Jaden Maiava at quarterback, who's one of the most talented guys in the country at that position. Then Wayman Jordan running the football for USC. And then Mekhi Lemon at wide receiver. That's the three guys to keep an eye on for USC. That, to me, Mekhi Lemon, that's a tough cover. It's a tough cover for Michigan. That's going to be, to me, is USC's got to jump on Michigan early. It's kind of the same dynamic I mentioned about Alabama and Mizzou. What does Michigan do real well? They run the football. Well, if you're USC, you really need to jump on Michigan early. Jump on them. Score, go down the field, Maiava to Lemon, touchdown, get on them, and then force Michigan to play from behind the whole game. That's, to me, the recipe for success for Lincoln Riley and this football team. You've got to jump on them early, get a lead, and then make them attempt to play catch-up. So that's the key, to me, to success, key to victory for Southern Cal. Michigan, you just got to keep doing what you're doing. Run the football, Justice Haynes, control the time of possession, grind it out. That's the key to Michigan, really. And USC hasn't really shown any ability. I mean, can USC, can they Can they stop the run? Well, when you look at the recent contests that they've had, with Illinois 171 yards, 35 carries. 5 yards of carry is not going to get it done. That defensive unit has to be better at stopping the run if they want to have a chance against the teams like a Michigan. And we haven't really seen it from USC. We saw the loss to Illinois, which kind of, bumped them back out of the, the top 25. But they need to prove it, to me, is like they need to prove that they belong in that top 25. Because it's like I said a few weeks ago, USC's not going to fool me again. Like I'm not going to get fooled by USC again until they prove me otherwise. And I feel like, though, as many people as I see saying USC is going to win this football game, I think that Michigan and that rushing attack with that offensive line, Justice Haynes with Bryce Underwood running the read option, he's not going to be asked to do that much. Because if Illinois can run for the yards that they ran for against USC, Michigan's going to do it to another level, in my opinion. And so I've got Michigan winning this one. However, I think it is going to be the over and under total points is set at 56.5. I don't know if it's going to be that high scoring, but I'm thinking somewhere along the lines of 27-24. Michigan is where I've got it at. I just think that Michigan in that rushing attack, I think they do enough. I think it could be 27-17 in the fourth quarter, and USC maybe scores late to pull close. Maybe they try an onside kick, don't get it, something of that nature. And I think that could probably be the end of that football game, 27-24. Michigan over USC. The college game day destination, Eugene, Oregon, for Indiana and Oregon, there at Autzen Stadium. This is where we find out a lot about Indiana, because we saw Indiana blow the doors off Illinois, a good Illinois team, here a few weeks ago. We kind of got this newfound respect for Indiana in that spot. And the question here is, going into Eugene, are they able to not let the moment, put them in a position where they're wide-eyed, deer in the headlights, can't get it done type thing? This team, Indiana, I'd argue this Indiana team is better than the Indiana team we saw last year. All the narratives that surrounded this Indiana team last year, when we talk about, everybody wanted to talk about, oh, well, they were the beneficiaries of a soft schedule. They didn't have to play the only team they really played that had a pulse was Ohio State. Everybody else was unranked, yada, yada. Like, we heard all the talk around Indiana. Well, this is a competition right here. Indiana can kind of put the narrative to bed. They can go in here. They beat Oregon. They can put the narrative to bed. Kurt Cignetti can put the narrative to bed that, people think they just took advantage of a weak schedule last year. And Oregon, to me, clearly the favorite. But with the way that Indiana is able to generate points, and what we've seen, when they get hot, they can score with anybody in the country. When they get hot, they can really stress a defense. Now, Dan Lanning is one of the most trusted men in college football, in my opinion. For me, he's one of the people I trust the most at game planning defense and getting ready for certain opponents. And he's going to have his work cut out for him. I'm sure he's probably spent some extra time in the film room this week, especially when you look at guys like Elijah Surratt, when you look at Omar Cooper Jr., and the way that they can stress your defense on the outside. And then also Roman Hemby running the football downhill. Not a small guy at all, 6 foot 210, I believe. He's a guy that's really running downhill, averaging about 5 yards a carry. And then you've got the guy that makes it all go, Fernando Mendoza, who is projected, first-round pick in next year's NFL draft. Great quarterback. Big size, 6'5", 225. I'd argue that, Indiana kind of upgraded in that department, where, last year, Indiana, we saw, the quarterback was still great. Don't get me wrong. But Fernando Mendoza kind of leaps and bounds, has improved on that position for Indiana. And then with the two dynamic receivers, And another fun little tidbit, little nugget, little factual nugget here for you on Indiana. What if I told you that there's one defense in this matchup that is top 5 in the country in tackles for loss and sacks? A lot of people, if I asked you which one of these defenses is first in the country, tackles for loss, and is top 5 in sacks, who would you say? You'd probably say Oregon because of the Dan Lanning effect and the fact that, game planning defense, Dan Lanning, that's his thing. But no, it's Indiana. Fun thing to watch for on Saturday night. We're watching this football, or Saturday afternoon, we're watching this football game, is watching this disruptive Indiana defense. I guarantee you that's on like the top 5 things that I never thought that I would say. Disruptive Indiana defense, but they are really disruptive at the point of attack. They come downhill and hit you in the mouth. The only issue that I see with that is they tend to, when you go back and watch this Indiana defense on film, and I've watched them a little bit this week, they tend to get a little too aggressive. They tend to get a little too cocky. They overextend themselves sometimes. The issue with that with this Oregon team is the fact that Oregon has a guy named DeCorian Moore, and they have a quarterback named Dante Moore that can really burn you if you do that. If you leave DeCorian Moore on the outside and single press man coverage, and you don't get home with that defense, Oregon can and will burn you in that regard. They really can. Not to mention the fact that, Oregon has, just weapons all over the place, which we've known them to have that, from time to time. We've known them to have the weapons, but they just kind of keep reloading every single year. Oregon gets better, better, and better. DeCorian Moore, like I said, not enough can be said, about him, as far as that goes. Kenyon Sadiq as well, tight end. Keep an eye out for him, number 18. Another kind of Swiss Army knife style tight end. They move him out. They'll stretch him out wide. They'll put him in the slot. They'll put him down. He's definitely got the size, about 6'4"-ish, 250, 245. Definitely has the size for the position, but also very athletic for that size. So something to keep an eye on for Oregon there. This is a pick too that I haven't struggled with it per se. I've got Oregon winning this football game. Don't get me wrong. I've got Oregon winning based on the fact, one, it's at home, and the point total over and under 55.5. I feel like this has the making for a shootout, and we haven't seen much of that this year in college football. We've seen a lot of defensive struggles. We've seen a lot of mid-scoring affairs. We're in for a shootout. I'm really looking forward to. I really want to watch a shootout football game. I'm talking one of those games that comes down to who has the ball last. And I think with these offenses, I feel like that we could be in for that. So I'm going to go with Oregon in this one. I'm going to get with Oregon, Indiana blowing by the point projections of 55.5. I'm going to say Oregon wins this football game, and I've got Oregon 41, Indiana 34. I think this has the making for one of those games where one of these teams is scoring 40 points, the other one's scoring in the mid-30s-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. I really want to see it. I hope I can speak it into fruition or whatever. Hopefully we can see that because I really want to watch a really good back-and-forth style offense, two juggernauts on offense and just really, putting up a ton of points. So, man, it was hard for me to narrow it down. I'm not even going to lie. Like, for me to pick 8 games, it was really hard for me because there's a lot of games out there that I really would like to throw in there, but it's games that probably a lot of, y'all as my listeners aren't interested in. So we're not going to really go over them, that much. These are really the marquee games, the games that are getting all the attention, from the media, from people like yourselves who are fans of these football teams. So, hope y'all enjoy your weekend. Throw something on the grill. Have a great time. Have some cold beverages. Have your friends over. Have your family over. Y'all have a good time. Eat some barbecue. Whatever you want to put on the grill, man. You want to do some chicken? You want to do some chicken? Whatever. Like, do it. Have a great time. Great matchups this weekend. Hope y'all enjoy it. And as always, we will be back here on Monday recapping all the action from the weekend. And I hope that I have a ton to talk about. I hope I can do a 2-hour show Monday night from all the storylines that come off this weekend. Until then, I will see y'all next time on After the Whistle. Y'all be easy. Be safe. Catch y'all later.